Jesus is a pimp and Annie Lobert wants to jump his bones. A few things to clarify before we get to this episode. The term prostitute is generally considered a slur among those who work in the sex industry, and the term that is preferred is full-service sex worker. I will be using this phrase throughout the video rather than the slur. Annie Lobert is a former full-service sex worker who also spent some time working as a stripper. She spent about 15 years in the life and had to deal with some really crappy things while working in the industry. Since leaving, she has started up a program or ministry, you may call it, called Hookers for Jesus, where she helps women who are working in Las Vegas as sex workers leave the business. A review of her website, which is also the website for Hookers for Jesus, indicates that it is a decent ministry that houses and shelters those needing a place while they transition back to civilian mode. And while I would not want to give to her ministry because of its Christ-centered orientation, I objectively see nothing wrong with what little I was able to find out about it. But in reading her book Fallen, which is quite heavily advertised on her website, I do see a few things that are objectionable and does raise some concerns about how she perceives those in the industry, herself, and ultimately God. During her career, she was in the employ of either one or two pimps. I am unsure of the number, as in the book she refers to the second as a boyfriend, but in an interview for the book she refers to him as a pimp. She suffered numerous beatings, a few close calls to psychos, and a ton of terrible things that no one should have to experience. I am a former sex worker and know a bit about the business. Not nearly as much as she would know, but enough to feel comfortable talking on it. In my experience, most of the former workers who have turned against the idea that sex work is an acceptable job do so in line with the ideas of certain feminists. The term used for this strain of feminism is SWERFs, sex worker exclusionary radical feminists. And the argument is that sex work, any kind, no matter how voluntarily entered into or how much choice the worker has, is wrong. The basic thrust is that it all reduces women to objects. Annie, however, has a different view of this. In her argument, the reason sex work of any kind is wrong is that it causes men to lust and to either have sex with people who are not their wives or to masturbate. For example, after her first foray into full-service sex work, a friend with a Gideon Bible talked her into quitting, and she went into stripping at various clubs. She says now it was wrong because, in her own words, truth is, if a man is looking at you with fantasy in his head, he is lusting after you, and more than likely will act on that lust through porn, self-gratification, or other women. If this was her only issue, and the speaking ill of sex workers is not a minor one, I probably wouldn't have had a video. But the book got a bit weird. While describing her life before Christ, quite a few times Annie referred to men and compared them to Jesus. And I was starting to get the feeling that she likes Jesus. I mean, like Jesus. In her words, describing someone she was with, yes, unhealthy, definitely, but to me at the time, nothing but true love. I saw Julian, her current pimp, as the savior I had been waiting for my whole life, when I really needed was Jesus, my savior. Remember the part about her thinking of Julian as her savior, and how she compares it to Jesus being the savior she needed. Further on, after she cleaned up her life, this passage comes up. I remember I was pursuing God with all my heart, my soul. Nothing could satisfy this deep desire but Him. I was a God chaser, and I continually asked for more because my hunger was so intense. Up to this point, she has been in 2 major relationships with pimps. In each case, she repeatedly talks about how she gave her all to the man she wanted, and how much she desired them to be everything for her. The parallel of how she describes her love for her pimps and the way she loves God/Jesus are pretty clear throughout the book. And just when I started to maybe think I was reaching a little too much in reading this section came up. I had a dream one night that I was sitting on a bus stop in New York City. A man with long brown hair, dressed in a flowing robe, started walking towards me. I was immediately supernaturally drawn to him and couldn't keep my eyes off of him. Something in me just knew it was Jesus. I wonder how many other men she knew wore long flowing robes. He was strikingly beautiful, with strong facial features, chiseled, defined angles. His eyes, one crystal blue, the other emerald green, were radiant with light. A foot or two of distance between us, we stood facing each other for some time, his arms reaching out towards me. In this moment, I couldn't help but feel the most intense embodiment of love and peace. I didn't want the dream to end. Finally, he drew closer, inches from my face. As Jesus looked at me with his most deep, intensing love stare. Oh. I'll be right back. Sorry, where was I? No, the book doesn't go on to describe a porn scene, but instead what Jesus wanted her to do with her life. And it's about here I finally realized what Jesus was to her. Here is part of a list she created of how a pimp controls someone. Each one of these was something that happened with both of her pimps/boyfriends. He keeps track of and total control of her every move. He uses torture like beating, rape, forced drugs, use of denial of food, or access to the bathroom. He uses sophisticated methods of manipulating the human desire of hope through false promise and lies about a future better life. He takes away money, assets, forcing her to be financially dependent on him. Gendered language is hers, not mine. She's not oblivious that guys or trans people are in the industry, but she seems to want to leave them out of the narrative altogether, although she kept a nice story of when the trannies chased her out of LA. He withholds sex and affection as a way to emotionally control her. Now, here are some of the things she has said about how she relates to God and Jesus. She asks him for every move she makes and knows he watches her all the time. He has set up a paradise for her to live in after she dies, as long as she does what he wants. He tells her what to do with her money. He tells her what to do with her life. He would not allow her to have sex or even find a husband till she was ready to marry his choice for her and only have sex with that man. Quote, I will not send you the right husband until you understand who you are in me and what it's like to be a godly wife. I want to be your husband first, so I can show you how your earthly husband should treat you. And finally, when she disobeyed God, she believes God gave her cancer. Through her career, there was an obvious pattern. She would fall for a guy, she'd be independent until he broke her, he would then put her to work making money for him, and then she would pretend as if everything was the best until it got too much. The last third of this book, describing her relationship with Jesus, follows this pattern, as well and with as much intensity as her previous relationships. And I wonder if in another 15 years from now there will be another book on the shelf where she describes how she managed to free herself from this one. Thank you for watching. I hope you like and subscribe. Later on this week, I'll be releasing another video. It'll either be about Keith Hovind, part 2 of my series, or it will be about John Hagee. If you're not sure who John Hagee is, he was the man who told the world that Katrina was the fault of the gays. In this book that I'm reading, he is talking about how Trump is the one true hope to keep America and the rest of the world from going into the apocalypse. It's an interesting read. I will talk to y'all later. Again, this is Alanis Garcia, also known as Was Now F. Bye.